Rev up your engines. Okay, today we got a rarity, a Toyota Highlander that has a problem. It's handling squirrely. It's just handling all over the place. Now we'll give you the backstory. Kid who's got it now, inherited. It's got 169,000 miles on it. Hasn't been any massive wrecks or anything, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's sat for a few years, and that may go into the mix. Now, they were thinking about getting rid of the car, but he said, no way, I'll get it back on the road. Now, one thing you have to realize about these cars, this is the V6 3.3. This is one of the few Toyota engines ever made that has an interference engine and a rubber timing belt. Now, Toyota makes pretty good timing belts because this baby's never been touched, right? And it's still running. He knows that. He's gotten it back on the road, so he's going to change the timing belt on it. You don't want the belt to break and then the pistons hit the valves and ruin the engine, because this vehicle, as you can see on the door, baby's made in Japan. VIN number's J, it's made in Japan. And aside from tears in their leather seats, it's still in really good shape. Now, even though it's been living in Massachusetts, back in '04, Toyota was making them pretty good. Look at that frame. Solid, not rusted or anything. Even the rocker panels are solid. Look at that. His friend's got a Jeep. The whole rocker panel fell and then it broke in half. The whole thing was a pile of junk, right? This thing is still in solid shape, but strangely enough, he found a mechanic who was a really crook in Massachusetts, and they told him this thing's all rusted out. You're gonna have to spend thousands. He went and said, that's baloney, took it back, give me my car back. He got charged $117 for a brake inspection. Looking at the brakes, gee, okay, I'll take $117, right? Well, I'm not that way. That guy was. But it's not rusty. If you're going to lie, at least have some basis in reality. This thing isn't rusty out. Learn a few things here and there. This is superficial rust. See? Yeah, it's rust. But it's superficial. It's not any kind of structural thing. You're always going to get nuts and bolts and brackets that rust in a car that's in the salt water. But, hey, it doesn't mean anything. This is superficial rust. If this was all cracking on the top like a Dodge, the whole strut tower would come off. But no, it's nowhere near that. Now, the reason these older ones are better is because in 2022 for the 2023 model range of the Highlanders, they dumped these marvelous V6 engines that can run forever for a turbo 4-cylinder engine. And if you really kind of look at the history of what's happened to Toyota lately, putting smaller turbocharged engines isn't panning out all that well. They went from the V8 to the V6 in the Tundra. They've had engines blowing up on them. They went from the V6 to the 4-turbo in the Tacoma, and people are whining that they just don't pull the boats like they used to. They just don't go 4-wheel drive like they used to. Hey, this has all-wheel drive on it. It's got a V6 engine. It's got plenty of power. There's no problems with it. You get a Turbo 4, it's a completely different animal. You get a heavy vehicle, you put a 4-cylinder engine, it's going to be strained more. You get a bigger vehicle, you should get a bigger engine. I know there's some of these idiots out there that are buying full-size pickup trucks that have 4-cylinder engines with turbos on them, and they may put out the horsepower once they start revving, but they're not going to last as long as the bigger engines that were non-turbocharged engines. These V6 engines, they're not race car engines by any stretch of the imagination, but they got enough power and they will just keep running and running. This is 160,000 miles, doesn't burn oil. I mean, they knew what they were doing, they made it. But in this case, this thing's acting squirrely when he's driving around. Now, when you got a suspension problem, the first thing you got to see is, hey, is anything odd looking? Now, we see the distance here, about 5 fingers. We'll go back here, 4 fingers. Then we'll go to the other side. This is 5 fingers plus, so this side is higher up than the other side. When we go to the front here, that's 5 fingers too. So, there's something going on here. This part of the car is lower. So, let's look under here. As you can see, here's the strut. Look, the strut is actually starting to touch the tire. And when we go to the other side, this is what you're supposed to see. You're supposed to see a nice gap. I can get my fingers in here, right? There's a gap I can get my fingers in, but on the other side, I can't get anything there. It's sitting on top of the tire. Now, since it's collapsed that far, I advise something that I normally don't. They do sell quick struts where you get the whole assembly, the spring, the bearing, everything in the strut. And all you gotta do is unbolt that and put the other one on. In this case, I would advise doing that because if you just got the strut cartridge replacement inside, odds are there's something worse than that, because even if the strut is worn out, the spring should hold it up higher. It's not holding it up higher. So in this case, you want to replace the whole strut assembly, and it'd be best to do it on both sides. So that's what he's going to do. A lot of people couldn't figure out what was wrong with his car. because they didn't use their head. You do the check like I did. The first thing you do is look for anomalies. And if you see one side's lower than the other, and you go to this, which was the most obvious thing on earth, there it is. The strut is sitting on top of the tire. So, it's shot. Otherwise, it's an excellent car, with the exception that roof leaks a little bit. I personally hate sunroofs. Now, if you have a sunroof and you actually use a stupid thing, realize one thing. There's a tiny drain here, a tiny drain there. Then when you go to the other side, there's a tiny drain here and a tiny drain there. I got a video on them. Compressor, you can get some fine wire and you can feed it to the hull and clear it out. All sunroofs leak to some extent. They don't have a perfect seal on them. So those drains drain it. Well, if the drains get full, then the little canals that feed the drains overflow, and then you get a flooding inside the car and water gets inside. So if you do like it and you're going to use the stupid thing, clean the drains out. Try to park away from things like evergreen trees. Those needles will get in there and plug them up. But if you don't care, hey, all you got to do is get a little bit of silicone clear sealer, seal it all the way around, and it won't be leaking on you anymore, because that will make a perfect seal if you don't want to mess with any of that crap. Or like me, just buy a car that doesn't have a sunroof. ABS lights on. He wants to know what it is, so we're trying out this new X tool here. It is a IP1919. It's pretty professional. We got it hooked up. We'll do an auto scan. All right, we know it's North America. Make sure the engine's idling, so start her up and we'll read the trouble code. Malfunction of ABS control system, low battery voltage or high voltage at the battery. Generally with these, the ABS control unit is what goes bad. The voltage, that can come and go, change the battery, whatever it's at for you. So what we're gonna do, turn the car off, clear the trouble code. We got rid of that, and he said something about the airbag system too. Let's check that out. Function of occupant classification system. So something's going on with the little sensor, the weight that's in here. It weighs how much people weigh and detects how much pressure to send out in the airbag. So that's why it's doing that. So now we're going to take it for a spin and see what the data is. We're on through check mode. So here we go down the road. I'll roll up the window. And if you listen closely, back there, I can definitely hear that strut rubbing on the tire. It does need a new strut. Hey, the only thing wrong is the strut has broken on that side. You really want to change them in pairs and they might wiggle, woggle. When you know what you're looking for, it's kind of obvious. Always start with the obvious things. If you start getting a lot of wobbling while you're driving down the road, it could be your tires are worn out. It could be your struts are worn out. It could be you got a broken sway bar link. Can be lots of things, but you always start out logical like I did. And if you see one side's lower than the other, start there. Now, I hadn't driven it until the end of the video. If I would have gotten this thing before I did anything, I would have heard that noise in the back and I would have immediately gone and said, what the hell is going on here? But, as I said, I'm not a quick strut fan because the quality sometimes isn't the greatest. But you're going to save a ton of money. You're getting all new parts. If you were going to replace this with the original Toyota parts, you'd spend a fortune. You got to buy them all separately. You'd have to buy the strut, you'd have to buy the spring, you'd have to buy the mount on the top. It would get super expensive. So in this case, using the quick struts, not a bad idea, really. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Well, if you own an e-bike, you might find yourself being banned on certain roads. In Lincoln, Nebraska, on all their trails, they've already banned gas-powered bicycles, mopeds, motorcycles, and golf carts. And they're thinking about banning electric bicycles. Now, they do have a speed limit of 25 miles an hour. So if you got a regular bicycle, or you can run really fast, you're only supposed to go 25 miles an hour. And of course, a lot of the e-bikes go a lot faster. I've got some that'll go 48 miles an hour, so they are relatively fast, and riding on regular trails where people are at that speed is just total insanity. When I ride mine like that, I do it on roads that there's nobody around in the middle of nowhere, and they're regular roads anyways. As long as there's no cars to run into you, there's a big fight going on because a lot of people are like, I don't like the electric bikes, they're too fast, people are rude. And truthfully, I gotta say, generally a lot of times people on bicycles are rude. One of the main reasons people in cars hate people in bicycles is because they'll go through the stoplights, they won't pay any attention to the rules, they'll ride on the wrong side, decide to all of a sudden just turn one way or the other. You know, a lot of the bike riders aren't obeying the laws. And if you got a little electric bicycle that can go like 45 miles an hour and you're on one of these trails, you could kill somebody who's hiking or walking. They got a point, you know. The problem is a lot of people get them for fun, and you ban them because of the bad people, where the other people, a lot of old people, they get electric bikes and they love them because, hey, they make you feel young again. You do a little bit of pedaling. As per usual, the bad seeds ruin it for the good seeds. You know, it's kind of always been that way. The bad people ruin it for the good people. So I'd say don't ban all the bikes. Just put up a speed limit and enforce it, right? And if they are going too fast, make it a deal. The speed limit, blah, blah, blah. If you go faster than that, we will take your electric bike and impound it. And then they wouldn't do it, right? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.